Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of TheoryForge Fridays, episode 46. You got the goods. We're talking about trade. Sending this over to Velix, who's going to be running the show today. Velix, over to you.
Welcome, everybody. It's been a while since I've been on. It feels like at least a few weeks, but thanks for showing up to another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about a few different things, but one of the big things we wanted to talk about this week was trading mechanics and games that have trading mechanics in them that work well, and what kind of trading things might be viable for an MMO setting. I know crafters really love when things they craft can be the most valuable thing in the game, and you need trade to do that. So that's kind of the topic we're going to go along the lines of. But anyways, I'll start it all out. First off, thanks Diggs, Neuro, Sog, fellow co-hosts, being on, and thanks audience for showing up. I'll send a question out to you guys, I guess. You guys can jump in, whoever wants to answer first. But favorite game, like trading card game or trading based game that you've ever played, and why? Just to open it up.
I guess in terms of a game that is fully trade-centric, that everything about the game is centered around trade, there is no better example than EVE Online. That is all the game is a giant cost-benefit analysis. There's a giant, spreadsheet management in space. So in terms of trade, yeah, every physical good has to go from point A to point B. There's no instant mailboxes. Somebody has to take a risk and take a contract to get something from one place to another. So it's in that respect, that is probably the pinnacle of a game related to trade. However, it was so focused on that it wasn't fun for me to play. So, the trade it had, but, I need the rest of the game to be fun too.
For me, I don't know. I just recently got back into it again, and it seems like it's a game that I can always come back to very easily if I can find people to play with. Is Magic the Gathering, just like actually with physical cards, and it's one of those things too, you've got a big collection built up, so you feel invested in that, you want to keep playing. And yeah, I started getting into that recently. I really like the design of the whole game, and I mean, the one thing that makes it really interesting is you've got all the 5 different themes to play in, and the way the game is sold, you get a bunch of stuff you don't need, so it's like it almost opens the door to like, hey, do you want this? You've got something I need, and you start trading with people. And I really love that style mechanic. I haven't played too many games where you get a whole lot of that. I feel like Hearthstone would be really benefited from having something like that where you could trade a lot with people, but I haven't delved too deep into Hearthstone, mostly because I love Magic the Gathering so much. It's hard to look at Hearthstone and make it feel like it's a really good game too.
I've been playing quite a bit of Hex TCG. It's actually a Kickstarted project by the people who made the World of Warcraft trading card game, and it's progressing really well. It's a PvE based trading card game, so there will actually be like dungeons and campaigns and co-op things going on. A lot of interesting stuff, and it's not Magic, but it's an in-depth system for trading and for the card game mechanics. And the trading's been fun. I haven't invested anything in it yet, but I feel like I'm not like locked out of even beginning. There's good flow back and forth. As for Hearthstone, I like Hearthstone for the mechanic of the game that it is, but I don't think it would benefit from adding trading, because it's really built against that, and the whole monetization model, the whole everything. And we'll get more into this as the day goes on, that Blizzard loves soulbound stuff, and
I gotta say there's trade that I kind of want to see to some extent, maybe not necessarily in this example, But I would say what Diablo 3 tried to do with the auction house was kind of interesting, and honestly, that just we see auction house in a lot of MMOs. But the emphasis on it, I think, is a little bit more different in Diablo or games where there's a lot more randomized loot. The idea that you can get a green item with the right combination of stats that just makes it like really awesome and worthwhile, or other higher qualities of items that it just ends up having the right set of stats that you see, this isn't for me, but I've looked around ZAM and other places. I know there's builds that this is valuable for, and I can either put this up on the market directly, or I can get, combine this with another item or something that I have and try to sell it as a package to somebody, potentially someone that's kind of new and getting into a specific build. And I can see, a lot of the trade opportunities that come out of that. But I would actually like to see it even more like not just enemy random drop loot, but more the people actually crafting items and actually crafting, stuff with a lot of randomization and trading that, which Vanguard actually brought about. There was a lot of adjustment and a lot of variation with the items in that, and there was definitely a high emphasis on players driving the economy, at least a lot of trade, and a lot of special items you'd have to get from other players. So that, I think, is actually my favorite example of a game with trade, because there was just so much involved with the process of trade and the process of making the items.
Diggs, we haven't heard you chime in. Trade, what game really stands out to you because of its trading mechanics?
None. I'm too old for card games. I mean, I was kind of into World of Darkness when Magic the Gathering came out, but Magic the Gathering is for people about 5 to 10 years younger than I am. I think that was big for them, but not for my age. We were still heavy into RPGs. There's
one thing about Magic the Gathering that, and this is, I don't know if we have anything else anyone wanted to say on this, but it was a big problem that I started to observe more and more over the years, and it's at the point where it's basically a critical mass for older cards and older players, is that it's basically been an arms race of evolving new tactics, techniques, new types of items. Oh, dual mana land that you can just put down and get one or the other. That's awesome. All these new abilities. Planeswalkers, I don't even have one. So when I play against somebody who actually does, it's like, dude, I can't even compete with you. You've got this special category of card that didn't exist like pre-5th edition, which is when I was playing. That was a long damn time ago. That was when I was in high school.
Yeah, one of the downsides to Magic the Gathering, big one, is just the way they have their formats set up to keep people continuously, buying and supporting the game. It's phases things out, and they had big power problems in balancing, where they kind of let things get too powerful and kind of phase things out. So they've been trying to fix that, but that's one downside to when you get. I think with any trading card game, you kind of get into this area eventually at some point. I feel like Hearthstone, kind of even from some of their first editions, they really were phasing cards out so quickly by just them being irrelevant. It seemed a bit odd to me, but at the same time, it is Blizzard and people are buying it, so why not?
That's the model. There's a Hearthstone expansion coming out next week, I think, but there's a little bit of power creep, and there's this purposeful change because of the way that game is designed, that it's not a trading game. Because you can't trade, the only way to acquire new things is by time-gated rewards, like a daily quest, or once a week you do the Tavern Brawl, or you buy something, right? So if you have in that system, if there's no power creep, your whales never have to keep paying. So it's keeping the big money spenders spending. So they have to do that. They have to phase stuff. there are cards that no one would ever put in a deck, but they give to you in your initial starter pack. That because even though it's still a 2-cost, 3 attack, 2 defense card, it's not nearly as good as the one with 8 different modifiers that you can get now. But
Right.
when it comes to trading, like Felix, we've talked about a couple different things, like a trading card game where you have cards in your hand. Trading is interesting, and trading is like dramatic because you have to find somebody with the card.
Or
Well,
catalog magazine catalogs of
let me
less.
finish
All right.
what I'm saying. You know, and I know there are stores, I know there are online marketplaces and stuff, but you still have to you have to find a point of contact with a buyer and seller. But in a lot of games we play now, there is a central auction house, which is the way that things move between players. And what does create, and initially, like in the 90s playing Magic, you couldn't search on the internet and have a card mailed to you from somewhere. There was no Star City Games, and you had to know somebody who had found that card, right?
Well,
Or
Yeah,
I wanted to ask because Vel, you had a built-in group, right? You played with your brothers, didn't you? And your brothers have like a collection.
and that was and the thing too, like even when we would go out and play at like a local shop or something, and we'd all go and play together. We would play with other people, and as far as trading goes, what Saga's saying, like we wouldn't necessarily, everybody would kind of have like a binder of the valuable cards people might be looking for, and so you'd glance over people's, and then maybe you'd make a trade. Then it wasn't so much like it wasn't difficult to find somebody to trade with. I mean, if you were trying to look for a specific card, then it would be, but that's why like singles buying online from like TCG players kind of like dominated the singles market. So, but yeah, I mean, I played with a group of people, and that's what made it a lot of fun to me, because you have a group of friends. It's like a D&D group, only the difference with a TCG game, it's instead of just getting with a group of people, you have a persisting character. You have this really dynamic, dynamic creative thing. You're building decks, changing it out. You get to do a lot of creative things that, D&D still, you get to be creative with your character, but you get to have a lot of strategy. It's also, too, a strategy game, more so than I think other games are group games. So it's really interesting to me in that respect.
So how would that work for you? You have a bunch of brothers. You guys, how would you get your cards, and how would you maintain your decks within the family?
Well, so basically we all just kind of like combined into a giant collection, and we would all just, change up, build our decks based on our mood, and everybody had rights to any cards, but if you were the one who like bought and contributed certain cards, then you get like, first priority if you want them in a deck. But
so it's
anyway,
like basically Lego sharing rules.
Yeah, basically. And we would basically, whenever a new set would come out, we'd buy a huge booster box of like, I don't know how many booster packs are in it, but we would do that, and then we'd look at, test around things, and then we'd buy singles to fill out, when we're actually deck building. So that's kind of how we did it. And then we just
You bought them at stores?
Sometimes you would buy them in stores because it's convenient. You can get them right there, play with people. And then sometimes if like you knew they were more costly, you might buy them online just to, shop around different stores. So.
And then you had how often would you play you had a game at a store that you would like?
Yeah, we started doing that. Like we would play like Thursday nights or Saturdays, depending, and then like we started doing Friday night Magics. We would go, and we tend to stick to the legacy because to me a trading card, like any type of TCG type game, what I think is really valuable in those formats is like for Magic the Gathering, if you're playing a legacy format, any card, you know, there's been like some 10,000 cards printed. Any card is viable, and the way the game is really complex, which might be a downside, but at the same time, there's so many different ways that cards can interact and with stuff that you can always come up with new strategies. You know, it's the one new set comes in with a new set of cards, and all of a sudden it can shake up the entire legacy scene. The same way a MOBA champion comes in and shakes up the entire format, but I think it's on an even bigger level. But
And in competitive Magic, a 60% win rate is like godlike.
that's pretty good. If you can, yeah, if you can win more than
If you
50% of
win
the time.
60% of your games, you are at the very top, because it's so, there's so much random draw involved, and the way that the game is designed, that situations come up where you can or cannot cope with it.
Yeah.
No matter how good your deck.
All deck-based games have that randomness, like everything from TCGs to deck simulations. Guild of Dungeoneering, you can fight the same boss 5 times. Half the time you'll beat it because you drew out good cards. Half the time you lose because you didn't get a single defense and it's hitting you for 3s and 4s for like the 3 turns you're alive. So there's definitely a lot of that randomness, and that's one of the reasons why decks are such a preferred format. And I see the deck format applying to games that don't necessarily need to use a deck. For example, Cards and Castles, it's a 9x5 strategy game, but they use a cards and deck system basically to manage your game pieces. When you play a card, it puts a creature on the field that you get to manage, but it uses a deck format, and it uses that to let you kind of set up what you're bringing into each match and what kind of sideboard and all that stuff, which I think is actually a really interesting way to do it, because it's basically taking trading card game as an organizational system and applying that to something where the characters are actually removed from the physical card itself.
So going back, taking this back a little bit towards trading, part of the reason I was asking Velix, and Diggs was asking him too, about like how did he go about getting cards? What was trading like when he was really playing with his brothers at home and going to the store and buying packs and seeking out singles? Like, I want to then now, real quick segue. I tried to play Magic, but I don't have enough like real life friends to meet up and play games with. That I never had a group of people to play the game with. So I play video games, right? In an online video game world, I've got friends in other states and other countries that I can meet up with when we're all at home sitting on our computers. But how does Velix's positive experience with trading with Magic then correlate to an online MMO world?
Well, one thing that I think, to actually talk about trading specifically, I think one of the reasons I enjoyed trading in Magic is because you didn't really know, you didn't have something specific you were going for. Sometimes you'd just be like looking through something somebody was doing, and you'd stumble across a few cards and be like, oh, maybe I could build a deck around that. It just kind of led to new things. And then the really underrated thing is just, there was social interaction, because, you're looking at somebody's set of cards that you're, going to be trading with. So you're talking with them, it created this social atmosphere, which, I thought that was a lot of fun. And it, adds to the experience when you're then playing games, with people. Like if you come to the same shop all the time and you see people that aren't even acquaintances really, you just see the same people all the time. You kind of know what they're doing, their favorite stuff because you've looked through their cards, so it adds to the rest of the game because you've been trading with these people. And when you trade with somebody, you get to know a bit about them, because there's some haggling involved, there's all this kind of stuff. You get to kind of bounce back, and I don't know, it's like that clash of personalities that you get. I think it adds some interesting social element to the game space.
So the first thing you do is you seek out an individual. So before you even definitely know what you're looking for, you're seeking out an individual. finding out what's available from that individual, and then determining if there's a chance for a mutually beneficial transaction.
Yeah, basically. And, you know, you're getting more out of it, too.
How can that be applied to, and when have you seen it applied to an online world?
I haven't really. I haven't seen it done in that specific way. You know, like everything ever since, I don't know what game came out with the first version of like what an auction house is, but you know, the World of Warcraft auction house, that's really dominated because it's just so efficient. You know, it's just so convenient is the best way to say it. So, but it's the thing that it's done is it takes away that social element entirely, which to me is a big thing when it comes to trading, because I look at trading as in real, you know, in real life. When two people are trading, there's the, you know, a back and forth. You're haggling. It's like going to a car dealership or something. You're bartering. It's this bartering system, and the bartering system just isn't popular these days because it's not efficient. It's not efficient. It's not convenient.
I would say one game that actually is a good example, even in the past at this point, Star Wars Galaxies did have a lot of that because there was a lot of social aspect to it. When somebody makes something, their name is on it. You know who made it. So if they make something good and they have a reputation for making things that are good, well, that starts to add another social element. Not only do I make things that are good, but you know to come to me to get good stuff. If you're a trader of rare and awesome materials, you come to me to offload those. And you start to create yourself a little bit of an empire. You become a little bit of a weapons tycoon, not because, you know, you've been grinding the game like thousands and thousands of hours, but because you built yourself a good reputation. You never let any crap out of your sight or any crap items you made. You just took to a vendor, or you sold in some other way so nobody would have access to it, or you just destroy it. And basically the idea is that you would have a lot of social value, and everybody would really have to trade with you. That was one of the other things, is I don't remember items necessarily having a defined inherent value that you highlight the item and it says this item is worth 1900 credits or whatever it'd be. I'm pretty sure it was something that you had to basically take up with the people you were trading with. So yes, there was barter. Yes, there was trading specifically for money or one specific material. I'm sure there were a lot of people who's like, you know what, I want to give you something really good. You seem like you really need a nice weapon, but I'm going to need 10,000 of this specific material. See you in a bit. It's...
With that, then how were people connecting? Was there a trade chat channel? Was that... I didn't play Star Wars Galaxy.
If I remember correctly, there were trade channels, or if not, there were ways to... kind of communicate on message boards and other places that you or somebody on that server, this is where to find you, because it was very open sandbox. You could run for miles, or kilometers or whatever. I think they use kilometers, and you would see like a few little nests to kick over and not a whole lot, and then all of a sudden you come across this this giant weapons facility that somebody's built up as their home, their factory, and everything else. Well, somebody could have easily, gotten directions from there one way or another instead of stumbling across it. But then that also adds a nice little element of discovery, that your station becomes a little point of interest in the world. So it's not just the ability to kind of, have people see your weapons. It's not just the ability to post on message boards, but, just being out in the world, being something that people are traveling for a while and they see this in the distance. All of a sudden they see a weapon shop they've never seen before, and it's got the best damn weapons they've ever seen. Well, they might not remember their way back there, might not really, trust their memory. They might just buy up the farm, whatever they can. So, there's a lot of that sort of stuff too. But definitely, I'm pretty sure forums and world-specific message boards were one of the biggest ways that trade was facilitated, because it was a really big world, or a really big set of worlds, I should say.
I want to go around asking and hear from everybody what just the initial part of trading is finding a point of sale. It's making a connection with the item that you're looking for, finding it. We'll start with Velix. I don't know where people are on the Twitch stream. I just see the Skype chat here. But if you are looking for an item or you're considering trading or making a transaction to improve what you have, whether it's to grow in power or just something you need for another project or quest or whatever, would you like to have to encounter someone in a common meeting place and strike up a conversation and find out that they have something you want? Would you like there to be an ongoing trade, like official trade chat channel? Would you like there to be a central gathering place, like normally East Commons Tunnel or RuneScape, original RuneScape server 001? Logging in was basically one big trade bonanza. That was like people waited hours in the server queue to get in to be in that spot where that was the trade area. Or would you rather? Do you want an auction house? Is that what is the best way and why? What are the reasons why you would or wouldn't want something?
Obviously, I think this is like one of those personal flavor type things. It depends on what type of game somebody's looking for. If we're talking about in the context of an MMORPG or, a social online game where you're taking on the role of a character, I find any type of auction house or just really convenient, hey, I can go directly to the thing I want. It's too immersion. I mean, it doesn't break the immersion, but it doesn't add immersion to the game, So, I mean, although an auction house doesn't break immersion, to me, I like the idea of like an East Commons tunnel, or just like you were saying, with RuneScape, having a RuneScape trades. I like the idea of you getting on to a character, like you jump in the world as your character, and upgrading or, finding the thing you need is a little mini adventure in its own. It doesn't have to be an obstacle or a task that is getting in the way of you doing what you want to do to have fun in the game. It can be that day's mini adventure. Hey, I'm going to go to the market and look around and see if I can find a better weapon. And you bounce around. Maybe you meet somebody. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just looking around all the other stuff. Maybe you saw stuff you never would have thought of. If you have the auction house and you're like, oh, I want this item, you'll go straight to it. Maybe there's something else there that you could have gotten that you would have preferred, but you just didn't know existed because you never came across it. So I think there's a lot of value in having that adventure or that journey, that task of, hey, this is going to be an ordeal to get this, and its own little mini quest, if you will, that it doesn't give you any experience or anything, or maybe doesn't give you any progression, but the fact that you actually find a piece to upgrade, that in itself feels like a little mini victory. You're like, oh, I searched through the bazaar the whole day, I found this really good price on this, and you feel a win from that. You feel a little victory. So to me, that's the ideal system I would like. Obviously, there are ways that it can be done to make it more convenient for casual players, like, hey, we know at this certain time on this, in this place on a server, there's going to be a market there, and everybody just comes in, and that's fine, Or I think EverQuest had the bazaar that kind of ran 24/7, and people could just have alts or their other characters just be shops while they were offline and stuff like that. So, and even that to me is better than an auction house. It's like an auction house, but at least you're going out and you're searching, I felt like that was a little bit of fun, even though there wasn't as much social experience or interaction involved. But yeah, that's my take, kind of. And I know it's personal preference, but I just feel like if the goal is to have an immersive RPG experience, the more you can make a player feel like they're in the shoes of that character, the better. So.
Tiggs, what do you think? How do you want to?
Neuro's up next in the rotation.
Oh, I'm up next.
Neuro is.
Neuro
I guess we're going counterclockwise. Okie dokie.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the key things to actually have a truly legit trading system is that there is no such thing as a static item. Nothing is, this basic gray, broadsword or whatever. That does not exist. And basically, the idea is that there's only so much you can do with data mining. There's only so much you can do with spreadsheets. But ultimately, there isn't this giant list of all the items that exist that people can sit around and stats debate for hours on to determine what they want in their build, whether it's in a marketplace or on a website even. The idea that everything that they're looking for is something that has unique features and characteristics, and if we throw Revival in the mix here, even who makes it and what they use to make it would actually matter, and its use in the future. You didn't realize that the person that you got a weapon from that happens to be particularly decent and you got for cheap, there's some sort of evil devil ritual that applied to it, and you've got some sort of demon soul trapped in there, and it's just getting more powerful as you kill stuff. You didn't know that, and there's no way you could have known that because there isn't a demon soul enhanced dagger that you can look up on a website or anything, and it's not really going to say that in the item's details. That's the sort of thing for me, is something where nothing is static, everything is dynamic, everything is able to be made in kind of a unique way based on a template, the same way you would create your character with a bunch of sliders and variations and pick their skills and stats, kind of a lesson version with that level of variation on each and every item. That's half of it. Then the other half is, if you are going to have an auction system, I really like the idea that you actually have to go to the auction house you bought it from. You have a catalog of every auction house, but you have to go to the location to pick it up. And combining that with a special little extra bonus that those items have to be equipped and soulbound in that region, or it dissolves when it leaves that region. So that way, if you get a powerful item that lower level people can equip, sure, they can go over there, they can run over there. They actually have to equip it, though. They can't just bring it back for their buddies, and it basically becomes a part of their essence, so they can actually take it over the line, over into other zones. That, to me, like using those two systems together, would really promote one of the best trading systems. Now, in terms of that creating a lot of social interaction, if everything's unique, then there really isn't any easy way to shop around. If there's an auction house of like 1 million items that are all completely different, good luck searching for those. It might be easier to just contact somebody and commission a specific piece if you really need something that specific. If you're just looking for any old sword with a plus dexterity on it because your last one broke or got eaten by a rust monster or something, then you just buy what you get and go forward.
I think that's a really important point. There's a lot of crossover between trade and crafting, and there should be in the right, in the ideal system where you've got a realistic type economy, you're going to want things specific enough to where players can jump around and feel like they found something really unique, and at the same time you're going to want to incentivize people to communicate with other players and say like, hey, can you make me this? And you create a lasting relationship that's going to keep those players staying in your game. If the goal is to keep a sustainable game, you want people coming back, and having these little acquaintances and these little friendships that develop online through a game is a great way to keep people coming back to keep playing. And I think having that very good interaction between trade and crafting is important to any trade system, especially in an MMORPG.
So I realized I didn't actually answer the question. So in terms of preferred trading mechanics, I like catalogs for things from farther away or specific crafters and vendors, and a centralized place to find them. Maybe a trade hall in every town and every little outpost you can go to and look at catalogs from different people that have sent their catalogs there, or drop them off manually. There might be an auto magic updating system to it, so as things get sold, they automatically get crossed off, and maybe just as a benefit of convenience, because you don't want people running around. It's like, oh, sorry, already sold it, because that would just suck.
8-hour trek to find out it's sold out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I sold that to a bloke about 15 minutes ago. he went that way. Good luck.
I like that. I like that idea.
I
I get your point. Go on.
It could be pretty painful though, and I like local trade chat within a certain radius, a certain region, sort of thing. Not global trade chat. And I like it regional specifically because if you do want to just hand the item over to the other person or peruse their wares, it's like, yeah, I've got this thing, but I've got some other cool stuff too. And they show off their stuff, you show off your stuff, and a lot more bartering can go on before you actually have to get the exchange of gold in place. So I personally prefer local a lot more, and the idea that if it's going to be something from far away, yeah, you're going to have to trek over there, and yeah, it's you might have to mail based on a catalog and confirm your order before you go over there, sort of thing.
Who's next in the rotation?
Diggs.
Diggs.
So I think one of the problems we're encountering right now is we have in mind these classic MMORPG methods of handling trade, which we should be tossing away. So one of the things that I like, I just want to chug everything to begin with. I think my first interaction with trade in an MMORPG was when I was starting off in vanilla EverQuest. I was in Canaan, playing as a gnome, and we had and playing on PvP teams. So small races were a team, and we had a dark elf traveling however far he had to travel to come over to Canaan and trade with us newbies. So he was probably, I don't know, 5th to 10th level, something like that, and he just, even though he was the enemy, he liked coming over and trading items with us, which at that time meant dropping items on the ground for us to pick up. And so what I like is local trade, knowing who I'm trading with. My preference would be, for example, in Revival, to stick around Crown's Rock, know who I'm trading with, know what they're capable of making, and it's not even so much about, it's not even necessarily so much about I want this specific item, but that I know these are the items that this specific person is capable of making, and they're capable of adding these kinds of buffs to them. So one of the things that we've heard in Revival is that a certain player might have the recipes that allow him to add perception buffs to his items. And if I'm interested in having high perception, then I know that I can go to that person and they can make add the kind of buffs that I want. One of the other problems that I had with EverQuest, and I think this first came across in EverQuest 2 and then moving into WoW, is when I would start seeing high-level people with high-level items that were really cool, and I wanted to be able to get those items. And often the items that they were making, that they were getting, were achieved through crafting. But I was able to get those myself. So one of the problems with an MMORPG is that you have masses of players. And by the time, I see that one person who has the item that I want, and then I never see them again. And so again, I would want to be able to focus on local people and know that the people in this area are the people who can provide the items that I want. Whether that's NPCs or player characters, I don't necessarily care. I want to be able to form a relationship with the place that I'm adventuring in. And even like in Dungeons and Dragons, when I played that, I would know who the NPCs are that I want to provide me with the stuff that I want. And that's something that we're really not seeing in MMORPGs. The other real problem for me, and why I typically don't even trade with players in MMORPGs through auction houses or whatever, is that players to me are greedy. Um, I see what they have up for sale in the auction houses, and I'm like, why would I spend that? I would much rather make that myself. And if I have to spend a little bit more time to do it, I'm willing to do it, because there's no way I'm paying that price for that item or that resource. So for me, when I think about the way I would like trading to work, I think about Revival. It seems to me that we have these static houses that take up real space. People will have their crafting professions, whatever, and I know that I can go to that house or I can go to that storefront, and that person should be there at some point for me to go to that person and develop a relationship with that person and start trading based on their skills or their resources, or hopefully, like I was hoping would kind of happen with Landmark, I can provide them with the resources that I want, and they will use those resources to create the items that I want. That's what I'm hoping for.
So I guess it's my turn to answer the question. I hadn't, until Diggs answered the question, there was a piece that I hadn't really thought about, which was the fact that a game is massively multiplayer changes the trade dynamic so much. And like I've talked many times about that RuneScape World 1, and that was the first time that I really experienced this, like an overrun marketplace. There's just too much going on. And in EverQuest, I also played a gnome in EverQuest, but I made the death run to the mainland, and I spent a lot of time in Freeport, and East Commons Tunnel was where I went if I had something I wanted to find someone to buy. But one of the things I liked about a location-based and person-to-person trading environment was I could only sell, like, if I wanted to get the best value out of what I was trading. If what I was looking for nobody had around me, it didn't mean it didn't exist, but I couldn't get it. But that was okay. And if nobody wanted to buy even something that was really awesome that I had, but if nobody that needed it or it fit with them wanted it, it just didn't sell. I brought the wrong thing to the market that day. And it was bringing things to the market. I liked bringing things to the market. I did a little bit of Stein of Magog farming in original EverQuest because I was a gnome enchanter. I could do the whole quest on my own, and because I had to go to the Ogre City for part of it. It is a whole long around the world quest, and I'd come back to Freeport and be like, I got another one, guys. That was kind of like my job. My job was to go earn myself a new Stein of Magog and sell it, and then use that money to enchant metals, and hopefully somehow... I didn't even really care about making a profit, because that was just like my lot in life in the game, and I was okay with... there was no positive benefit. But the thing about that, it becomes so much harder when the game gets really massive. Like, even early EverQuest, it was an MMO, but not massive like the kinds of players that we see logged into games now. And the auction house may be a side effect of how do we just deal with that many players? And how do we do it And that was that, but that created a whole nother set of problems that I don't prefer. So maybe it's about, maybe the real question, in order to make meaningful trading happen and to feel like you're actively involved in an economy and feel like you're building personal relationships with your point of sale, is about finding a way to cultivate smaller communities.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about a lot is, and auction houses are rising out of this idea that, and it's something that as civilizations, it's like a historical thing, like you have Rome, this giant civilization. You have things start getting centralized because it's more efficient, it's more organized, and trade in an MMO, when you have that many people, a centralized trading system is an auction house. A localized trading system is more of like a barter. Hey, I meet up here, in this trading hub and trade some stuff. So, but everybody's kind of brushed on this a little bit, and I wanted to kind of push further into a new kind of aspect of trading that I think is extremely relevant. And Diggs had brushed on it, Neuro brushed on it. I even saw you. I thought you were going to start talking about it straight up when you started answering, but is the thing of actually physically bringing the object to market. It's something Revival is doing, and when you have really valuable cargo, even if it's in a PvP related game, then obviously you have that threat. But also too, with games, we've talked a lot about games moving into more of a dynamic world setup where you have mobs that are actually roaming the environment. All of a sudden they become threats to trade and economy, because if you have to physically transport goods across the world, then you have to deal with, and it also, this further layers in the interactive social environment where now trading people have to talk with fighters, soldiers, and mercenaries and stuff too, and you create this complex economy. But anyways, my point is, I kind of wanted to ask everybody, what's your opinion? Like, would you prefer to have kind of like the mail system we have today, where you just have a centralized auction house and there's no risk involved in the actual transport of the good, or would you prefer risk? And don't answer the question as if PvP or PvE. Just let's assume that even if you're in a PvE server, there's risk in transporting because of AI could rob you.
I'll say this: it really depends on the context of the game. If everything about the game is like casual, easy mode like Trove, and then there's this one dangerous thing that can happen, maybe not. That's not the right environment. Something like Revival, yeah. Something like Saga of Lucimia, yeah. Crowfall, yeah. EverQuest Next, yeah. I want it in something that's meant to be difficult, something that's meant to be punishing. If that's the kind of world, then yeah, you need to actually bring that thing from point A to point B, or have someone transport it. You need to look up people in town and be like, hey buddy, hey, looks like your sword's kind of rusty and chintzy. Why don't you get with the big leagues, get one of my fancy jewel encrusted swords? Might not do any more damage, but
I've always been a fan of transportation being important, and wanting that to be something in a game. Like when Crowfall started talking about caravans, that was like that's one little key thing that I've wanted in games forever. That I shouldn't be hauling stacks and stacks of iron bars on my back and like flying on my griffin casually to the auction house. That I like there being different needs for different types of goods. So like the raw iron ore, you need these huge trucks and mules and stuff, and maybe just you could guard it yourself because no one's going to be able to haul that anyway. Unless it's a whole raiding party. But then as things get more valuable, you're like, oh, well, I need to get this really fine weapon out of high quality, like finished product from point A to point B. You think, I'm not sure how I'm going to protect that. That there becomes a real value to moving something too, and that also moves into designing a world to have regional differences, like places that have a desert region with a lot of sand. There are a lot of glasswares, like crystal balls, things like that, but they're not making, yew bows. A yew bow would be something that would be expensive there. Well, yeah, I'm all about finding ways to make transport a reasonable, functional part of the game and meaningful. That things shouldn't just magically appear after X amount of seconds from one mailbox to another because I dragged an icon into a box. Really moving stuff it's interesting. It's tough to implement correctly and in a way that isn't totally non-intuitive, because I don't want to be overburdened and basically crawling at a pace across the world. I need to drop stuff on the ground because it's too heavy and I just can't move. No, I should know ahead of time and have a better way of handling the fact that I was going to be picking up heavy stuff than overloading my pack like I'm playing Skyrim or something. Like, if you pick up too many pewter cups, you can barely move. No.
So
I don't want
the problem to me stems back again to trying to come up with a solution to classic vanilla EverQuest, vanilla WoW, that we're used to out-leveling areas. And people, because you out-level your newbie area, you could be way across on the other side of the map at any time, any day. I have a transaction that I want to conduct with you, but, yesterday when we started the transaction, it was at Canaan, and now we logged in today and you're in Freeport. How are we gonna make this trade when we're on opposite sides of the map? And so again, what I would prefer is a game like Revival, where you don't out-level areas, and I can be pretty sure that you're probably going to be in the same spot, or the person that I prefer to trade with is probably going to be within the same spot for several days. That could also mean that it may take me several days to move from Crown's Rock to Congarai or Sky Pass. I might have to make that travel across continent, but the person I'm planning to trade with will probably still be there once I get there. If we can do that, then we don't necessarily need to have instant mail. I think that's fine, but the instant mail was there to take care of a specific problem that we just should be avoiding altogether in any case. We shouldn't be thinking about, I need to move across the map at the blink of an eye. It should be fine to stay in your specific area, and there should be content keeping you in that specific area for quite a while that's different than what we're used to in classic MMORPGs.
I agree that there needs to be a way to, if you want to be really far away from a city, you have to have a way to live very far away from a city, but understand that there are consequences to that, just like there are consequences to living in a city. Like, you're not going to be mugged by a player living out in the woods, but you may struggle with basic survival needs.
But I mean, if what I want to do is mine gold and I have to be away from cities to do that, then that's cool. But you will probably know, my people will probably know that I'm likely to be out mining and not in the city, not near a mailbox. I mean, closer to real life, right? We don't have to have the instant mail.
Should resource acquisition be a long-term endeavor or quest in
I
a broad sense. Should that be should I leave town thinking I need to go on a week-long logging trip because I am a lumberjack? Is that
I
okay?
I'm gonna say this. I think it's bad for MMOs. It feels really weird. I think it's bad for MMOs. No, but really, that harvesting is a one-person operation. Picking a few flowers for a quick potion. Okay, you're in a mine, fighting creatures, and you happen to see a sweet vein. And it's like, all right, well, I did bring a pickaxe in my equipment just on the contingency that I would see the specific vein that I was looking for. Here it is. I'm just going to grab up a little bit of this. Not that much because I can't carry too much because ore is heavy, but enough that I'll be able to bring it back and do whatever alchemic stuff that I need to determine if this place is a viable place to set up. It should be more the act of actually setting up operations. Harvesting stuff in the wild, that's cool. Agrarian society basically defeated that. Once you can actually grow your own plants and stuff, you don't need to harvest in the wild. Farms are way more efficient. Mining operations, they're way more efficient. Heavy machinery, supply lines, getting people working in rotation. It's more than just having it as a single person task. Turning each aspect of collection, each aspect of harvesting, each aspect of processing resources into its own industry basically gets rid of the individual who goes out, chops down one tree, and drags that tree back to town because it's like it's 5 times heavier than they are, and they're just so stubborn. They're like, all right, I'm gonna pull it by the branches and bring it back to town. It's avoiding that sort of thing.
I have something to say here because I think, whether you go one way or the other, like say you say, all right, we're going to say that people can't do that. Like we're not going to require people to harvest all their stuff, So you move away from that and then you have the person that's like, I want to be a lumberjack for my whole career. Like you're always going to have that one person. But I think the remedy in MMORPGs is to, we have AI, we have computer NPCs, and they can have jobs. The remedy is making it to where players and AI are as seamless as possible, to where, if somebody wants to be part of a huge AI mining operation, they can be one person there and they get special benefits for being a part of that operation, or and then that way the NPCs can do all the dirty jobs if nobody wants them. And if people do want those dirty jobs, maybe give them really good perks for those dirty jobs. I think making this kind of blending this wall between AI and other players is a great way to kind of smooth out the economy in all these different ways with crafting, trading. Because if you can go to anyone and be like, hey, guard my shipment, whether it's a player or an NPC, it's just creates this smooth immersion that you would want from an RPG type game, where there's no big things breaking up okay, now I'm talking to a bot, I think that's like the real remedy, and obviously that's the hard thing to do, because if it was easy to do, I'm sure everybody would have done it right now, but we have games that are like, have these goals and they haven't done it yet, but it's on their plates and we'll see if they're able to achieve it, like EverQuest Next and Revival. I hope that they can achieve this sort of more seamless nature between a player and an NPC, because it helps solve a lot of problems.
I can see it functionally, but conversationally,
it's still not going to happen.
You're going to know if you're talking to an NPC or not. And I'm with Diggs on liking to know who my guy is. Like, that's my lumberjack guy. Like, when he comes back, I know that Wednesday is when in real life he has the day off work. He usually brings a shipment of lumber back to town. I like to be there when he's got it, because that's when there's stuff available. Otherwise, maybe there's no lumber in my desert town. That I like that. And they and you can create NPCs to fill voids when that happens, or NPCs can find that, but Now, the reason for playing these games is to interact with real people. And having poor interactions with real people doesn't mean that we should substitute real people for fake people. It means that we need to create a better environment and better systems to allow people to have better interactions with real people. And that's where I like what Diggs is talking about. Like, in using the revival example, in Crown's Rock, if you're there on your server, there are not going to be that many people. You're going to know the people. You're going to know the regulars of Crown's Rock. You're going to... I mean, when you see people you don't know walking around, you're going to be kind of wary because you know that they could pickpocket you. You know, there are going to be real relationships in these towns unless they get overrun with a massive number of players and just don't have space. But I think the Elphonic guys will find a solution to that very quickly.
The other interesting thing,
that's a good problem to have as a business, right? You've got too many customers.
The other interesting thing about that too, tying into trade, is I think a good trade system is one that's going to be interwoven, or at least influencing a lot of other systems you have in your game. You know, if you've done your trade right, if you've done your economy right, it's going to affect as many other game systems as it can, because, you know, that trade and economy work. So I like the fact that, like, speaking with Revival as the example, a lot of what they're doing also works because they have things like real player housing that's not instanced. You have people there, so people are actually tied to a specific town. Maybe they like the desert or Sky Pass or wherever they are, and they buy a house there, and it's an actual in-world residence. That ties them so much more into one place, and it starts creating this, you know, ebb and flow of where resources are flowing and how trade is going, and it starts to create this, you know, simulated, like a real-world emulation. You know, maybe it's a fantasy environment, but it's an emulation of real-world practice. And I think that's, you know, if your goal is immersion, you know, that's the direction you're going, because that's what makes it feel believable. And I don't know, that's always interesting to me, you know, which is why we here on TheoryForge, quite a few of us are really paying attention to Revival, because they're doing these other things to supplement, you know, all these systems interact. Whereas you look at a different game out there, and you can look at any MMO out there, and you look at their trade system, and it's trade system, and by and large it usually doesn't affect the other systems too much. And, you know, that's just the norm right now, but it's, you know, hopefully going to go away soon, because I think it's holding games back from having great, you know, economies that feel good and feel purposeful, so that you can have that person who's like, I want to be a merchant. That's all I want to do. I don't want to fight. I don't want to do politics. I don't want to do this. I just want to be a merchant and sell my goods and play the market and be rich and, you know, lavish my house and look good and have it, you know, and that's what some people want to do. And if you're not allowing that to happen, you know, and people to feel impactful in that role, then it's not going to ever happen.
Right. And so, again, when I think of Revival, I would rather, if I know that there's a player who is a cook and makes these pies that have the buffs that I like, then I can go to that person whenever I want those buffs. If I'm going to go out and adventure and I want my special meat pies or fruit pies, and they excel at that, then I know I can go to that one player. And again, we don't have to trade through mail or trade through the auction house. Maybe we like meeting up at a specific tavern. Maybe that means that part of the barter system is I buy them a specific drink that they like. You know, maybe we go to the brothel. There's all kinds of things that could happen when you know your local players, and they are going to stick around because they aren't out leveling the town.
Right. Now,
so
one thing I actually wanted to bring up was Ultima Online actually was very much a horizontal progression. You really didn't get that much more powerful and the most powerful gear on the most powerful person, you know, two people can potentially take them down with just a bunch of maces to break up their equipment and take them down. So it's kind of a funny sort of thing. But one of the things with trade that was so significant in that game was the transportation factor. Yes, it took a long time to get from point A to point B. You could have a pet, have them fetch things for you and hold on to them, but that's only like a little limited extra space. The first group on the West Coast server to have a castle that they proudly displayed somewhere that was easy to find was BBBC Transportation Company. They put rune teleporters all over the place. They had the marks and recalls for everywhere, and they made their money off of teleports from point A to point B, town to town, from the wilderness to town, from different locations. If you find them in the wild and it's like, hey, you're one of those people, make a teleport for me. So they, I would imagine, would only put themselves in places where they're not going to get ganked, because you wouldn't want someone stealing all of those runes and basically cutting into your business. But I'm sure they, you know, did things very, very carefully. If you stayed in towns, the guards would always protect you. If anybody tried messing with you, you shout guards, and the person messing with you literally gets insta-jibbed in the back of the head by a halberd from a guard, and their loot is just there on the ground. So they had a lot of protection if they stayed in guarded areas, and they were the ones that got the most money the fastest. They got the first castle. And it's because if you're getting a lot of materials from point A to point B, and that's the most convenient system, you don't want to risk walking over to the moon gate and getting ganked along the way. You don't want to risk, you know, any other transportation. This is the way that you go. This is what you do. You just go to them, ask them to open a teleport, pay them the fee, and you get from point A to point B. So they basically made an institution out of transport, and in turn, of course, made anything trade related where people could use that transport incredibly efficient and convenient. You could move tons and tons of material across the world really fast, and you just had to pay a nominal fee. So that's one other reason why trade being integrated with other systems is such a big deal, because if it actually even plays into transportation and how people even get around in the world, then that's yet another layer where player interaction and immersion really becomes a big deal. And of course, because you could get ganked at any time, a lot of people didn't want to go through the time to make a bunch of teleport runes that they take around everywhere, knowing someone could end up with them very, very easily. You know, a lag spike or two, and all of a sudden someone teleported on you and killed you, and you lost it.
So we've talked about general trading. We've talked about physically taking the items, whether we like auction houses, what games have examples of things we do and don't like, and we've talked about centralization and localization. One thing we haven't addressed that's a big part of trade in today's games is, and I'm going to pose it a certain way just to show my own bias here, but is there any value at all for soul-bound tagging that prevents trade of items in the right system?
I can only...
Absolutely not. I hate it.
I will say this about soul-bound items. An item that's soul-bound better be way, way important to the storyline, and it is bound to you for a very damn good reason. Not, oh, this is trash mob off a boss. Well, you can't sell this in town. You've got to pick it up and, you know, have it in your inventory permanently right now. That is junk. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. But if that item is one person gets to select this item, you might even be drawing straws. You might not want to get the cursed hand of the demon or whatever, because you know that's the only weapon. It's going to lock itself in your hand or whatever. You know, like a cursed item in D&D. So that, to me, is what soulbound should mean. It shouldn't just be some economy thing. It shouldn't be some trade limitation. It should be specifically, this thing is in your possession for a reason. The story is going to be altered because of it, and you are going to alter the story because you have it and are basically obliged to use it. Even if that person logs off, cuts their subscription, and never plays the game again, it's still significant. It's still significant that somebody got it and disappeared.
Yeah, I can see it being a pretty cool mechanic as a curse or a protection spell or something, as a way of modifying an item. But as a I don't know. In World of Warcraft it works. In Hearthstone, where there's no trading, everything's
No. I'm sorry, it doesn't work in World of Warcraft. When you kill bosses 400 times that have a 1 in 255 chance of dropping something soulbound, and you can't get it, and you can't get it from trade. That was my business accuroscope. No, that is a failure. That is a failure of the system. It is a failure of RNG.
It works for how they want their game to work, and it's just not the game that you.
I guess not.
But I don't like. I don't necessarily even like items, special individual named items that can be created in an unlimited quantity, but only held by one individual at a time to exist. Like, a weapon is something that somebody makes and somebody modifies and somebody turns into something and somebody learns how to use and becomes used to the weight and becomes like attuned to it, and then it becomes a really valuable thing to use in battle. It's not like, I mean, how many Thunder Furies do we really, really need? And
well, we had more of those than we had business accuroscopes. We had like 3 by the end. Like, all of our main tanks had a freaking Thunder Fury. It was like a Thunder Fury party there.
And with Demon Hunters, we're going to have glaives of Azeroth or whatever. Everyone's going to look like Illidan after. But no, this idea of there being unique items that are only unique because you can only have one and you can't trade it. It's something that works in the way that story is conveyed in World of Warcraft. And I'm going to say that even though I don't like the mechanic, it's not how I would design a game, not what I would do, that because the story in World of Warcraft is about the player and not about the world, and we talked about this in our storytelling episode a lot, that it makes sense. Because it's about you progressing through the one hero's journey. That's what that game is about. But that's not necessarily that's not what I'm saying I want out of a game. What I want out of a game is where your journey is your journey and you can decide if it's heroic or not.
But I don't think it's because of that. I think that the reason that you have soulbound items in a game like EverQuest or a game like World of Warcraft is because you're going to be raiding. You can't go and defeat that boss and then trade it to somebody else who didn't defeat that boss, when really those are the goals of these games, is to get to the end game and get your best in slot gear through the adventures that you had. So if you killed the Lich King, you can't take whatever you got from there and just give that to some newbie or give it to somebody who never interacted with the Lich King. It has to be soulbound to people who had that adventure. I'm hoping part of that has to do with levels and these steep vertical progression and, getting to 50th, 60th, 70th, 80th, 90th, and 100th level. We got to do away with that, number one. But number two, I would hope that, for me, I would like to be able to go to my local merchants, players if that's players, and have them craft stuff for me. And if somebody steals that item, hopefully I can go back to that person and have something similar crafted again. Maybe there is some special one-time unique artifact that's added into that I won't be able to reacquire. But one of the things that's going to happen with Revival is people aren't necessarily going to be able to keep their items anyway. A lot of the unique items may have minds of their own and decide, I've spent enough time with this person, I'm moving on to somebody else. I don't think we're going to have soulbound items in Revival, and I think that's okay. But like you're saying, the game has to be designed around that concept.
Yeah, actually, it's the opposite of soulbound. I think it's going to be, you're going to try to get rid of that item, and it's going to keep coming back in your inventory. You're walking along, all of a sudden someone bumps into you, you look in your bag, you poke your finger, God damn it, it's that freaking dagger again.
Oh, I'd be so pissed.
Too.
I would be so mad.
I agree with all of you guys. I feel like Soulbound is a solution to a problem that exists in the way these games are designed, and it serves its purpose, and it's good for those games, but I don't particularly like it for many and all the reasons you guys have listed. So I think, as far as like talking about more of the ideal trading economy that we've kind of been discussing as we've gone on and kind of been building up, it doesn't seem like soulbound items would serve a purpose in that, because if your economy has a lot of local, there's a lot of permanence to it, like we talked about Revival doing, there's relationships being built, and if you're living in a world that's dynamic and interchanging, and the AI and players are both participating in this, all of a sudden having these arbitrary rules of limiting things is a lot less important. And as far as like the legendary item type things go, I think for any game there should only be like one of these things per server. Like in one instance of the world, that's the only one that exists, and it may not necessarily be yours. It belongs to the game world. You may have possession of it, but there's no reason to say why a GM can't come along and cause some way of you to lose that item. And the thing that makes it okay is when you start adding narrative, because if that's how you're going to deliver your narrative, Diggs mentioned like how, and I think Sog did too, how the way the narrative is given to you in these games, that's okay to have soulbound items or multiple legendaries or whatever, because the game's all about you, which kind of begs the question, why have trade with other people in a game that's all about you? But that's a whole nother derailment. But the point I'm making is, if the goal of your game is to actually have dynamic narrative and you're changing it through, you can use these legendary items to change the narrative. And that's one thing Revival is exploring specifically. I haven't heard of any other games that's specifically exploring this idea of tagging items with things that are actually going to change the narrative and change the way people interact with you. So that's one thing I'm intrigued about, and I'm interested to see other games start using similar systems or exploring different ideas along those lines to allow dynamic things to happen and allow these items, and therefore the crafting and the trading in games, to be more impactful to the narrative overall. And I think that would be, if it was up to me, that would be my goal in an immersive environment.
The other thing we haven't talked about real quick, and that's should be great about Revival, is Revival will also include group crafting in a way that crafting isn't only one individual doing something, meaning you could have 3 jewelers working together to create something that the individual jeweler wouldn't be able to do themselves. Or maybe I'm a rogue and I have a stash of some unusual type of crystal, and so it's me providing this type of crystal to the jeweler that allows them to create the item that I'm looking for, so that it's not just about one person creating this thing themselves. It's about how multiple people work together, and not even so much in the sense of the jeweler has to go to the potion maker and all of this stuff that EverQuest 2 tried to do to force the interaction, but just make it so that the whole experience is more interactive, and that makes trade more meaningful all the way around.
I think Sog said it in the chat too, responding to somebody. You know, it's more about looking for worlds that are interactable instead of paths to follow. And the example you just gave, Diggs, EverQuest, they're giving you a path like, hey, you have to go here to here to here to get that really good item. Whereas, you know, with the concept you're talking about in Revival, which I hadn't heard about yet, but that sounds pretty exciting, having group crafting. Instead of saying this is what you have to do, you say, hey, if you collaborate, you're gonna make something better just by collaborating. So it's not forcing a path, it's more of giving people an option and an incentive to interact with one another.
Which I'm always happy with, because that's pretty much along the lines of the Neuro system I wrote a couple of years ago. So like I'm really excited to see it come through when it does come through.
So that kind of takes us through everything and more that we wanted to discuss today. But we did have a couple questions that chat chimed in with. Zyxita was the first one. I'll probably always say her name wrong, but what's the worst setup you've ever seen for trading? I think she asked it when we were talking about trading card games, but can probably be applied more generally. But I don't know, everybody or anybody that wants to answer, what's the worst setup you've seen for trading? Worst game or worst mechanic or what?
Vanilla EverQuest, when you had to drop everything on the ground, usually I was trading with my alts, so I would have to go into an empty house, make sure the door was shut, and hope that nobody else would be around seeing me go into that, and then I would hop off one character,
drop
hop
it on the
onto
ground, log off, log in your other character in the same
and run
house.
and hope that I get there fast enough that it hasn't disappeared.
That was against TOS. That was against multiplayer regulations for that game. Disc.
Yeah, I'll chime in with mine. I you know, it's a horse that I've beaten, kicked around a lot, but you know, if your goal is to make a multiplayer game, if your goal is to have an MMORPG, having any type of system or mechanic that doesn't encourage that gameplay is bad. So like, if you're making an MMORPG and you have an auction house, I think that's a horrible setup just to begin with. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
I have a hard time with this one. Go ahead.
Any game where a crafted item that I wanted to sell on the auction house was not as good as the low-level dungeon gear at max level is equally as bad across the board. Like, Final Fantasy XIV has some awesome crafting to it, and there's use for people who level up crafting because they can socket things. There are high-quality crafting items, but once you've got the top item, you've got the top item, and it's done. But then it's just like dungeon gear. That anything that the majority of trade centers around random drop items instead of a fluctuating economy of raw materials and finished products changing. Like in World of Warcraft, low-level raw materials are more expensive than the finished products they can make because high-level players who want to level up a new crafting skill just need the raw materials more than anyone needs what you can make with them.
Which I absolutely hate.
Any situation where the raw material is more valuable than the finished product it can make, I don't know. Unless it's
like
something
like the American Penny?
I don't know. If you guys read the Mistborn books by Brandon Sanderson, the people had to actually consume quantities of metals to be able to metabolize them and use them as part of their magic. You know, unless there's some sort of like real resource drain and consumption like that, I hate expensive raw materials just because, you know, I need because the economy is broken. And I've seen it in a variety. Every major MMORPG that I've played recently has ended up with the same problem, that low to mid-level raw materials become more expensive than what you can make with them. Because nobody wants to finish products, people just need to grind out levels of a crafting skill, and that's what you're selling to people.
Yeah, I mean, there's no amount of like, yeah, I made a badass two-handed copper sword. It might not be as strong as steel, but copper definitely has its merit as a durable metal and easy to maintain. So while it might not be as valuable as the one made from iron and coke, you know, making that nice steel and making a weapon out of it, you know, you can bring this into battle knowing, yeah, it might break, you just throw it away. That copper wasn't that hard to get, it's not that expensive. I mean, I kind of like that a lot. That's actually kind of in the Neuro system. Now, I want to give you my two examples. So, the first one is actually the game with the most asinine trade, and that was PlanetSide 1. Players every now and then would message somebody on the other faction. They'd go to a terminal. One would hack it for the other one, or you know, they'd hack them or whatever, and then they'd go to the lockers and trade back and forth. Like, I'll take, you know, 20 of your faction's heavy weapon for, you know, 20 of mine, or if other factions wanted to use the Vanu weapons, you can only access their ammo as Vanu, so you had to actually trade with them if you wanted Lasher ammo. It was a hilarious thing. And then even more so, vehicles out in the field. You would go and meet near like a protected warp gate with people. It's like, alright, you drive yours out this way, I'll drive mine out this way, we'll run across to the other side, hack each other's vehicles, and drive away to our respective bases with it. And it was just absolutely hilarious. But at the same time, having another faction's weapon or another faction vehicle is so powerful because you had the element of surprise. They see those shots, they come thinking that it's, you know, their people firing down, they'll just be able to like wave off and have you stop shooting. No, there's a bunch of machine guns waiting to fire right along with it. You know? So, or tanks, if you could steal one of their tanks, that was actually how I did the most damage towards my later days in PlanetSide 1. I'd take the Phantasm, the stealth vehicle, stealth aircraft, I'd go all the way back behind enemy lines, land, find somebody repairing their vehicle, hack the vehicle out from behind them, drive it literally straight through enemy lines to my base, get two people in it, and until I run out of ammo, enemies for some reason were never any good at fighting against their own tanks. Now, the other game I'm going to say here, DCUO. DCUO has the worst trading system of any MMO I have ever seen because of one specific thing. You can't spend enough credits to buy anything because you're only allowed a wallet of like 10k credits, and everything costs more than that. And if you want to access more than 10k credits, you either have to buy chunks of your value from your bank account where everything overflows after 10k, or you have to be a subscriber and you can automatically put as much from your bank account into your wallet as you want to. So basically you had to pay just to trade in that game, just to use the auction house. You had to spend IRL money, and that to me by far is the worst trading system in any MMO I have ever played or seen in my life. For a free-to-play especially. Like, that would be like if you're playing WoW and you want to use the auction house, oh, it's an extra $5 a month. Like, nobody's going to do that. No, actually,
Yeah.
they would. They totally would, unfortunately. I think I've got Blizzard's next idea.
All right, we have time for one more question here. I'm going to Baby Ken threw us one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think developers should have a hand in trading auction houses to try and diminish the impact of evil market manipulators?
They shouldn't create a system that makes that easy to do. It's like, well, why create Wall Street? You know,
Yeah, you know.
like, why? But if you create it, let it run. And there should be no repercussion for doing it either, because they created the play style. You know, I know people who have been banned for market manipulation from games, and that's just as bad as the fact that they created the ability to do it easily.
Market manipulator is a trading subclass.
Yeah,
basically
you get
what
a little bit. You get a little bit of bank, so you start driving up prices of stuff.
And you know how you level up? It's capital. The more capital you build, the bigger stuff you can get into.
Then you get bored, so you make a deal with a gold seller to be their bank.
I just avoid the auction house. I don't really care. If the prices are too high, they're too high, and they're usually too high. So I mean,
they're too high. They're too high if you have the time, but the problem is the fact that the auction house was put there. It's like complaining that people are, you know, mass buying stocks after Wall Street exists. You know, like, no, if you build the system, let the system run. There should not be monitoring. That was the core question, right? Should we monitor? Should we ban people for manipulating the market?
Yeah, and I agree too. I think, you know, if you're going to design the system and it's exploitable, then you've designed an exploitable game, and you're just going to have to deal with it. Because, I just think it's stupid. That's another reason why I just think moving away from trading house, auction house things to begin with is just a good move. Because if you have localized markets, or, you know, some more organic type, some leaning more towards bartering and stuff like that, it's a lot harder to do that. I mean, it's still probably possible. You could, like, go everywhere in the world and buy up everything, you know, of one certain type of thing, and then just sell it for an insane price somewhere. But, you know, that would be a lot of work for you, a lot of capital and investment. So I think you should be able to profit from doing that. If that's what you want to do, that's what you do. And then the GM comes over and kills you.
I feel like, if you put in an auction house system, you really have to just let it ride. You can't modify it. You can't change it. You can't meddle. If you're going to meddle with it, do it in a way that's tactical and story based. Don't do it in a way that's just, you know, brute force banning a player. If you want to wreck that person's iron or whatever, you'll just have an event where, oh, well, it turns out, you know, such and such happened. Iron in the world is starting to degrade, and we need to find out why. It's like, oh, well, all of your iron is now crap iron. Well, great. It's like the crap iron from the first Baldur's Gate. All the iron was coming out bad because the kobolds were throwing stuff on it. And so while a kobold didn't specifically go through and throw crap on your iron, there's nothing to say that they hadn't done that in the past. It's just taking until now to degrade. So there are ways that you know, if you really need to screw with somebody like that because they've taken a hold of the market, you can do it. And you can do it in a way that it makes it a world event. And I feel like if you're going to, that really is the way you have to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered almost everything that I could think of as far as trading, facets of trading, other than actual in-game currency. I mean, in real-world cash relating to in-game currency. But I think that is probably
2 weeks from now.
Yeah, that goes along the lines of a monetization model, which, you know, I think we're planning. Would you guys say 2 weeks? And we're going to be talking about free-to-play and monetization models with an industry expert. So that's going to be, we'll save that question for later. But yeah, that's it. That's it for I mean, did anybody have any last thoughts you wanted to chime in with on the topic of trade before we close out?
I would say between this episode and next episode, people should probably look into some of the different systems. There's that thing with WoW where you can pay your subscription with in-game gold. There's the relationship of subscription credits to credits in EVE Online. Spiral Knights, you just straight up buy and sell the material, the resource you need for crafting through oh no, he left. Through either trading with other people that have actually bought it or buying it yourself. So, you know, look at some of the different systems that exist out there, how real world currency translates to value in the game, because I think that's going to be a particular subject that's going to come up at least once or twice during that show. So that's all I got there. His internet took the perfect time to crap out, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And interactions between real world money and in-game currency, and how they can move back and forth between free or paid players are all very interesting topics. I think we'll have a whole episode on currency. We should do that next week if we can show up and do it. If we could do a whole episode on currency next week, and then when Omid is with us on the 21st, unless something comes up. Oh wait, did I just?
Yeah.
What, did I? Okay.
There's the reveal. All 10 of us heard it.
All 10 of us.
I don't know. There might be more people lurking.
But we'll be able to talk about converting games to a free-to-play model and really be able to stick to that topic relating to WildStar, because I think that's important to do.
Absolutely. Well, just to get the windows back in the right place here, I'm going to try getting them back, but I think it's wrap-up time here. So,
Yep, we can just say goodbye.
Yep, good idea. Alright, everybody, thank you very much for coming. We will see you maybe next week, but most definitely in 2 weeks. That is going to be a big episode. Spread the word, get your scotch, and we will see you then. See you later.